join me in welcoming Jim Hartzfeld to the TEDxAtlanta stage.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks a lot. Boy, I'm really excited to be here this afternoon. I have been a huge fan of TED for years. I don't know how many dozens of videos I have on my iPod. I don't know about you guys, or iPads, or how many of you have seen a video more than at least 10 times, the same video? That is the case. And I'm so excited about it, and it's so valuable for me and for other people. One of the things I use it a lot for is just to help me see the world in different eyes. How do I understand not only what other people are doing and thinking, but how are they seeing the world as well? And that's something I want to get back to in a little bit that I think is really important. But let's see, who am I? I'm Jim Hartzfeld. Back up until about August 31st, 1994, sometime around 10:15 a.m., I was just your average chemical engineer, MBA, just got my degree at Emory. I rocked this school, and I got a new job with a new company. I had my plan. I was going to get rich. I was going to get famous. I just wasn't sure how many years it would be before I was CEO, right? The MBAs that had that plan. Okay. Well, then I got the weird project. There was this customer that asked this nagging question that got to our leader, and that got to a task force. And the next thing I knew, I was assigned to a task force on recycling. 1984? I mean, what had I done? I mean, who did I make mad? Why me? What is all this crazy stuff about? But what happened along that way and came to the point that Ray Anderson, our chairman, came and gave a speech at that group is at about 10:15 a.m. that the chemical engineer, MBA, became a tree hugger. And that's kind of strange enough in itself, but one of the key messages I want to make here is the MBA, chemical engineer, tree hugger is still absolutely an avid and enthusiastic capitalist. Now that sounds like I might be a bit confused. I've had a few people tell me that I'm a bit confused. I think my daughter has used the term multiple personality disorder, or something like that. But no, and I think the pertinent point that I want to bring for you all today is that this thing about sustainability, this thing about finding new ways around our environmental challenges, we have looked at it through the lens of business, as business people trying to change the world through the lens of business, not as a regulator, not as an academic, not as an environmentalist, but through the lens of business. So what is this thing called Interface? It's actually a company that has the audacity in its publicly approved by its board of directors vision statement that says our purpose is to demonstrate what sustainability is in all its dimensions: people, place, product, process, and enthusiastically, the goal is to put all that together so we make a profit. That's the publicly stated vision statement for the company that I'm a part of. Yes, we make carpet tile. We make carpet tile. We're about 37 years old, about $1 billion in sales. We have factories on 5 continents scattered around, but that's what we are. Sustainability, carpet. I mean, don't you guys make money out of oil and dirt? Isn't that the basic business model? Oil and dirt? And you have the audacity to have this mission zero goal that you're going to promise to completely eliminate your environmental impact on the planet by the year 2020? And you're the crazy people that have this internal goal called off oil. Harrison, we got to talk. Off oil? And you even have this goofy little fairy tale inside the company about this legendary time when the future CEO of Interface brings to the elderly Ray Anderson in a little vial that last drop of oil that the company will ever take. Have you guys lost your mind? Well, maybe so. But that's what I want to try to talk about, is this idea of not only how can a company become sustainable, but how can that little seed of oil, that little drop of oil, possibly become a seed of change. And where it started was from an obnoxious customer. Anybody of you had an obnoxious customer? I mean, he asked a question, what's your company doing for the environment? What it really was is a statement veiled as a question. I don't know if you've ever heard any of those. Said, your company's not doing anything for the environment. In fact, he actually at some point said, you guys don't even get it. When that question got up to Ray, he actually said, get what? Pretty much confirming the statement of the consultant for this big building project. So what happened? Any good company, what do? Create a task force. And as you probably guessed it, I got the short straw. I had to deal with this and create this task force. But at that first meeting that we talked about, we started talking about this idea of sustainability. Ray dropped this bomb on us, and we had no idea what that meant. As an engineer, I'm thinking thermodynamics, perpetual motion, that second law thing. This kind of seems impossible. And then he dropped the next bomb. Can the company go beyond sustainable to actually become restorative? Further, and that was a completely mind-blowing thing. But simultaneously, with that question that came up from the customer, there was a daughter of a sales manager in Washington State, as far away from Atlanta almost as you can get in the continental U.S., that saw this guy speak. His name is Paul Hawken. She was blown away. She ran out and got his book. She raced it to her mom, said, "Mom," which was the sales manager in the West Coast at the time, "you've got to get this to Ray. This is the most incredible idea." So another seed of change was sown. Well, that book made it on Ray's desk. That's where his vision came from. And somebody mentioned it earlier, College of Commerce by Paul Hawken. This is the book that absolutely changed Interface. So Paul Hawken's speech led to a girl, which led to a book, which led to his desk, which led to another speech, and Ray started influencing Interface and started influencing beyond. Here's him on the TED stage about 18 months ago. And Todd, I think you said earlier that at that example of TED, he was the first person of the whole ceremony or the whole event so far that received a standing ovation. Todd's in the room if he agrees with that. But that's a seed of influence moving. So what we are actually about is, we make carpet. And actually, if you walk on carpet around here, it's Interface floor carpet. But it is about that idea of taking that drop of oil and turning that into a seed for change. And how can we do that in a way that continually expands our influence all the way to the last phrase now of this vision statement of the company is to become restorative through the power of influence. So when the folks talked to me about coming to TED here, they wanted me to talk on this phrase. What does that mean? How am I going to do that? Well, actually, the more and more we looked at it, we found that InterfaceRAISE, the organization that I work with right now, that is our mission. How can we become restorative beyond sustainability for Interface so that our influence causes others to have actions and take actions and do new things that they might not ever have done? And a few weeks ago, before I got the invitation, I was sitting with Ray Anderson, and some of you know has been wrestling with some health issues, and I was in his place, and we were talking about all the cool things we were doing around consulting projects and all that, and he said, that's a bunch of consulting stuff. Tell me, Jim, what you really do. And that was another one of those questions, kind of bored through your forehead. But what I think it really came down to, and what I hope to share hopefully really quickly here, is the three things that I think come together that help us create that idea of influence and roll that out. So hopefully, at some point in the future, perhaps people will consider Interface a restorative enterprise. The first one, people are not going to mimic the exact same things that a carpet tile manufacturer does in a plant in LaGrange or Thailand or Europe or whatever. But what we've found is actually the way we see the world has more of an influence on other people than the actual things we do. The things we do get their attention. They show that it's possible, but what really changes their minds is the way they see, not mimicking something that we've done. So it's vitally important to do that. Secondly, what we found is that it's necessary to engage everyone, everywhere around this idea of sustainability. And there is no one size fits all. Every single person has their unique door into sustainability. And thirdly, while we have massive problems to solve and we need to focus on problem solving, if we really want to create the future, maybe the future of Atlanta, even that Tad was just talking about, at some point we need to base that future on the best we can be today, the best of who we are, not just accumulation of all the worst things that we've ever done. So those are the three things that I want to touch on right quick. Back to this our idea of seeing differently. We believe that when people start seeing the world in different ways, they see new things and their behavior follows with them. I'll give you a quick example. This was in the founding of Interface. I mean, here's a 36-year-old guy in the early 70s that's going through Europe, and he finds this great idea, and actually it looks a lot like what's on the floor here right now, of taking squares of carpet and using that and installing them. He runs back to his boss in Georgia and says, "Boss, I found out the coolest new idea. We got to invest in this whole new business. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen." And the boss says, "Son, you mean you want to take perfectly good rolls of our carpet, and you want to chop it up into squares, And you want to lay a bunch of plastic on the back of it so you don't have to glue it down, and you're going to sell that at twice the price? Tell me why that's a good idea. Well, obviously Ray saw something that those other guys didn't see. He saw something that was going to change the world of particularly the office environment carpet here. Another thing that I want to bring to you, has anybody heard of Dana Meadows or Danella Meadows? Amazing system dynamicist, and this was an article that's had a huge impact on interface. It's how do we intervene in these big complex systems we're in? And she has a list of ways and places to intervene that starts with the less effective to the most effective. And it starts with things that we get into massive arguments about subsidies and taxes and incentives, and then it kind of gets a little more effective to think about the goals of the system, positive feedback loops, negative feedback loops, understand information flows, and as it goes up to the most effective way that she says is to affect change in a system is to challenge the paradigm behind the system. Challenge the mindset behind the system that defines how that system operates. And that's a big bit of what we do. And I'm going to give you a quick example of somebody that's seen the world in a different way. Here's just an ugly box, right? Well, I hear this story from a head of facilities at one of the biggest media companies in Manhattan in their brand new high-rise gold certified, LEED building. And I got to get a tour, and he says, well, I don't have to worry about the interface, beautiful box story. And I go, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, apparently, as they were trying to figure out whose carpet they were going to buy for this iconic building, they toured one of our factories, and the guy walks into this factory, and here's this stack of the most beat up, bruised up, wrinkled up, leaning over to the side boxes he had ever seen in his life. And he's thinking, my gosh, I don't want to buy from these people. If they're going to show me this ugly stuff, what am I not seeing? And what he says is that his employee comes up and says, sir, I think you're having trouble with our boxes. Well, I want you to know that here at Interface, we use a box until it absolutely cannot possibly be a box again. And then we recycle it. And he says that all of a sudden, my mind and my eyes changed. The ugliest box in the world suddenly become the most beautiful box. And what's more interesting about that story is this is the guy that leads the tours of this iconic architectural facility that he takes school kids and celebrities, and he says that almost every tour, he tells a story about the Interface beautiful box. The power of a story and seeing things in a different way. The next way is engaging. We tried for years to try to get our salespeople engaged in sustainability. Year after year, it just wasn't happening. You've always got a few influential or innovative folks that grab onto new things and take off. We had a few guys that really thought this was a cool marketing thing. They trot out the green story when they thought it was important to help them make a sale. But really, it wasn't happening. Well, the short story of it is we found out that Ray, a Georgia Tech engineer, Jim now a recovering chemical engineer, we're trying to describe sustainability to salespeople through the eyes of engineers. Do you think it's possible that somebody that makes their living interacting with interior designers and architects might see the world in a little different way than engineers? Well, what we found out from that is it's not just salespeople. It's absolutely everybody. Every single person has their own unique combination of factors that draw them into this idea called sustainability. It's their kids, it's their spouse, they've seen some environmental destruction, there's some unique combination. They've seen a visionary speaker that makes it real for them. So what we talk about is the 100 doors into sustainability. So our goal now as leaders sometimes is how do we create the conditions where people can find their door? How can they find their door and choose to walk through it? You cannot push somebody into sustainability. But once they walk in, it's like the old Hotel California thing. Once you're in, you do not leave. Once you see, you cannot unsee this world of sustainability. And a quick example of that is an InterfaceRAISE client was on a program there within one of our plants, and she got lost trying to find the restroom. And a guy driving a forklift comes up to her and says, ma'am, can I help you? Okay? And I only know this because I hear her telling the story back to her peers. And these are the senior leaders of one of the biggest food companies in the world. And she says, Jim is telling me all this stuff. I don't believe any of it. I'm trying to get the dirt here. So I just want to talk to this guy and get the real story. And I start out just asking him, what does he do? And he's on a fork truck, forklift. And she says, the guy says his job is to save the planet. She says, that's the most extraordinary thing I've ever heard. Either that, it's a really good plant. You know, Jen's been working this thing really good, but I am so far away from the restroom. It's so far, I'm so lost. So he starts asking him some more questions and digging in, and finally he says, ma'am, I'm sorry, the restrooms, you know, go around the corner. I've got to go because if I don't get this where it needs to go, which was a roll of carpet to that line, the line speed is going to go down, our emissions are going to go up, our waste is going to go up, and that's going to keep me from doing my job. So she told that story to her peers, visibly changed person, and said, oh my gosh, talk about engagement. Somebody, you know, a modest job in a company like this that can define their role in galactic terms like this, but not only that, be able to draw that line all the way back down to specific job performance requirements and make sure the job gets done. So that's engaging people. And the last one I want to talk about right quick is this idea of how do we imagine the future. There is one thing that we can do, which is intense problem solving. And when you've got when you're bleeding like crazy or you have an intense challenge, a safety issue, something like that, we need to solve problems and fix those issues. But what we found is there's a significant difference between fixing sickness and creating health. It's a fundamentally different approach. And if we spend all of our times in the problem-solving, sickness-curing mentality, we never do imagine and create the ideas of what we want to create. And what we found is one of the most positive, impactful ways of doing that is not plan for the future based on the worst challenges we have. Let's go right there. What are the kind of things we talk about in this whole environmental sustainability thing? The sky is falling, species extinction, oh, everybody's going to die. I mean, can you get more of a downer than that? How many decades have we been working on that way of trying to change society? Well, what we found is when you actually do your planning and imagining rooted in the reality of the best you've ever been, the best you've ever been. Literally beginning a session by having people tell stories with each other about when they were the most proud of being associated with their organization. Now, this might sound like happy talk, but it is not happy talk. Because if you take those stories and actually dig down deep and find out exactly who did what and what happened to make these amazing things take place, what you find is the real strengths of the organization, the reality of what we can do. And if you use that as a foundation to peer through that reality and imagine the best we can possibly be, a provocative proposition of what could be, that's how we create a more exciting place to be. So those are some of those three things that we talked about. And just to close up, I've got to mention something about the most surprising, outrageous, unbelievable turn towards sustainability. This company always generates hours of arguments and debates. But make no mistake, they've made an amazing change. And we had an opportunity to engage with their leaders and people in retreats. We had leadership teams in carpet mills in Georgia. They didn't even buy our bloody carpet. Ray Anderson and I took a first hour and a half of their first mass employee meeting on sustainability back 4 years ago and took them through this global village exercise that we do to help them see the world in a different way. Now Walmart, they're not going to do what we do in a carpet mill. But they've taken some of those ideas of how do we look at the world in a different way, how do we engage people on an individual basis, and how do we plan on the future based on the strengths of what we are, not some other person's definition of our problems, and go there. A guy named Doug McMillan, he's the CEO of their whole international business right now. And he has a great quote. You can even find it on YouTube now. A great metaphor he uses. He says that these crazy people in this Ray Anderson interface and Paul Hawkins' book, The Ecology of Commerce, they helped me find a set of glasses that I did not even know existed. I didn't even know they existed, but when I put them on, the entire world looked different. I couldn't believe what I hadn't been able to see before. We've been doing some really dumb things, but oh my gosh, look at the opportunities. Look at the opportunities. So this idea of helping people see in different ways, helping people engage individually on what matters to them and how do we create the future based on the best we've ever been is what I think comes together to try to create this idea of being restorative through the power of influence. There's one big dilemma I want to bring up just as I close that has been talked about in many different ways, but a local guy here, Phil Martins, is the CEO of Novelis, huge aluminum processing company, that he described it as best, and I want to get it perfect here. But his dilemma is that human history demonstrates clearly that the cure for poverty is industry. Unfortunately, we are now in urgent need for a cure for industry. Isn't that beautiful? It's scary as an industrial guy, right? What do we mean? Well, this crazy question that Ray threw out on August 31st, 1994, can a company possibly be restorative through the power of influence? What if that's possible? What if by the daily activities of every organization, we not only create economic vitality and social engagement, we actually restore natural systems? And if that's possible, what if everybody did it? What if everybody did it? I think it completely could change everything. Redefine governance, regulations, philanthropy. Will we really need philanthropy? It's one of the biggest questions I think I've been wrestling with for 16 years. And I love the forum of TED so we can continue to talk about this. We don't know the answers. We have more and more big questions. We want to keep engaged, and I'm happy to chat about that further. But thanks a lot for your time.